it's kind of hard to find debates now because the irony is a lot of people saw that debate, a lot of people. And then all of a sudden I started getting these offers of media companies. Scott Ritter's in my comment section. He's very big, over 500,000 plus followers. And he's like, I'll debate you anytime, any platform, and you'll lose badly. And I was like, okay, perfect. I immediately answered. I said, okay, let's do it tonight on my live. Still, it's been 3 or 4 days since that moment. Hasn't messaged me, hasn't commented, nothing. And all the people are like, oh, Scott Ritter's going to destroy you. And I'm like, well, get him on the phone. I'm ready. And I cannot get people to lock down debates.
Today's conversation is one I think a lot of people need to hear right now because there's a massive shift happening, not just in how people talk about Israel, but in how people think. You're seeing major influencers, political voices, and entire communities completely change their stance. And a lot of it is being driven by narratives that most people don't actually stop to question. Our guest today has built a reputation for doing exactly that, not just arguing, but forcing clarity, taking big emotional claims and breaking them down into simple questions that a lot of people struggle to answer. And today, we're going to get into all of it, the debates, the narratives, the misinformation, and why so many people seem confident in arguments they can't defend. Nick, Matau, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. I really appreciate having me on. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about that.
Right now, we're seeing a growing narrative, even from major voices that Israel is influencing U.S. foreign policy, even pushing America into war with Iran. What do you make of that?
It's interesting because generally when I talk to people, which is almost every night, and I talk to people, and this is a common topic right now with the Iran war, and they consistently say, oh, we're doing this simply for Israel. And I'm like, where are you getting that from? Well, it benefits Israel. Okay, but why does that mean it's for Israel? Why can't we just have similar values? They are one of our greatest allies, and they are our greatest ally regionally there. And they generally don't have an answer to that. They usually just pivot and they say stuff like, "Oh, well, the Iraq War, Afghanistan, all this, just all of it was for Israel." I explained to them, I was like, you have to understand uh, those in the highest ends of the Bush administration literally told us that Israel told us not to invade Iraq. Of course, nobody was a fan of Saddam Hussein. It's not like they were saying, oh, don't do it because we really don't want, we really love Saddam Hussein. No, that has nothing to do with it. They explained to us back then that, look, Iran is actually the bigger threat. And they told us they don't recommend invading Iraq. And when I tell them, a lot of people don't know that. And so they get kind of shocked. And so what I make of how it's portrayed today is I see it as a mix between the useful idiots, to put it lightly, and also there is a real infiltration, especially into the right wing, because they're the ones that support President Trump's actions the most. There is a real infiltration to try to trick Americans into thinking that this is not good for America. And not only is it not good, we should actually be embracing some kind of relationship with bad faith actors. And I think it's absolutely insane.
Now, you have people like Tucker Carlson, who has actually become one of the loudest voices pushing that narrative. Do you think he actually misunderstands the situation, or is he shaping something intentionally?
No, I think he's shaping something intentionally. I think his ear is the people whispering in his ears are all bad faith actors. I just read today, actually, just a couple hours ago, how there was this Pakistani Muslim guy. I can't remember exactly his name. I can find it, but he is claims to be one of the biggest financial controllers of the Tucker Carlson network. And then you have, what was his name, Amida Malik. I think he's Iranian, a Muslim man who also helped jumpstart Tucker Carlson's independent network and career with a very monetary gain. And so I think people have his ear. I don't know what's actually in his mind. It's kind of hard to tell what's in Tucker Carlson's mind, even from the early on, because, he was on Fox News praising President Trump. And then, during that lawsuit, he had to release his text messages. And one of the text messages says that he actually hates President Trump. He can't stand him. And so I don't really know what's in his mind, but I do know that the effects of his words are the same. So I don't particularly care if he does or doesn't believe it. The effects are exactly the same.
What do you make of the CIA investigating him for
I've tried
ties to?
to, yeah, I've talked with people. Um, that I know that are in the administration saying there's some legitimacy to it, but it's kind of like lock and key right now. There's obviously some rumors that he just kind of made the whole thing up just for attention, which, to be fair, he did exactly that when he was in Israel, when he was in the airport in the VIP lounge, and he did this whole like, oh my gosh, it was they were being so mean to me and they dragged us into this room. And then like we see a video and he's just kind of like smiling, taking pictures. And it's like, okay, so I wouldn't put it past him to lie to make something up. And it's really weird how it just kind of went away. So it's like, that's actually kind of what makes me believe it is true, because he comes out, he looks pretty nervous in that video, and he kind of looks like a guy that's trying to get ahead of a CIA investigation by shaping the narrative, kind of like what Joe Kent is doing a little bit now. Now we're finding out that this guy has actually been under investigation pre his resignation. He was barred from meetings, but when he resigns, he comes out with this message. And then by the next day, he's on Tucker Carlson. I think he might have been on Megyn Kelly's show, and he's getting all these interviews because he gets ahead of it and shapes the narrative. Now, truth prevails, but truth takes a long time, unfortunately. Lies can spread around the world while truth is still putting on its shoes. What we did notice, Honest Reporting, great organization, they actually, honestreporting.ai, actually tracked Joe Kent's interview with Tucker Carlson. And it was very interesting that the moment Joe Kent kind of said something, within that moment that someone was watching the video as it was released, there were hundreds to thousands of accounts that Honest Reporting was able to track using data, AI, and they were able to extrapolate links of all these X posts and social media posts that were posting the exact same video, the exact same message, as if it was organic, and they were pretty much copy paste messages of each other. That's not organic. That doesn't happen organically. The fact that at the same moment, right when this video is released, that people are watching it, that all these accounts just shared the exact same message, everyone had the exact same epiphany. No, I think there's very obviously a infiltration to try to trick Americans into thinking. That's why when you look at these polls with even independent Americans, it's not super high, but a lot of them have supported the war in Iran. When you look at Republicans, it's very much a lot of people supporting. And when you look at MAGA, which I'm conservative, I don't know if I call myself MAGA per se, but whatever. When you look at MAGA Republicans, the same people that Candace Owens, Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson, Joe Kent, they're all saying, "Oh, it's split, it's dead, it's dead." They have an overwhelming support. So the reason why people are saying, hey, how come, Nick, why do I see on social media there's this? But when you look at the polls, is that which one's lying? Social media is lying, because social media can be faked. Social media, not just bots, but even real people that are liking these posts from Tucker Carlson. Well, what country are they from? What's their ideology? What's their agenda? Even if they might be a real person, why should I care when talking about American policy?
Yeah, it seems like, you have other countries that are interfering. We saw it with Russia, right? With Trump and the collusion and all that stuff. I mean, it's not the first time we've seen it. Do you think it's just other countries trying to create controversy here in America, or is it something?
Absolutely. I think a lot of people, they constantly are poking at Qatar, which, don't get me wrong, I agree. Not defending them, but I think it actually goes a layer deeper than Qatar and some of these Muslim countries. I think it's Russia, actually, or it's all of them, but because of their alliance, they're doing the same thing. But the reason I think it's Russia, Russia has a history of doing this. You can look into something called Operation SIG. It's something that they did all the way back into the late 1950s into the 1960s. Operation SIG. SIG stands for the Russian phrase for Zionist governments, essentially, and you shorten it, it's SIG. SIG. Look it up on your own time, but what it essentially is it was Russia's disinformation campaign. Now, real quick before I go, misinformation versus disinformation, some people think it's the same. It's not. Disinformation is a purposeful trying to flood on purpose the media, the minds of people with misinformation. It's an attack, it's a strategy. It's actually coined by Stalin himself. That word disinformation was coined by Stalin. And what Russia did, or the Soviets at the time, what they did was they started off saying, okay, we want to be friends with this new state Israel. They can be a communist ally. They saw the kibbutzim and they're like, hey, look, they might have a similar ideology. And then you go into the Sinai conflict in 56, and then all of a sudden they're kind of siding with America and the British, and the Russia's kind of like, okay, maybe this is just a one-off. Let's give them a chance. And then you have 67, the 6 Day War, which is the prime example of a war you should never teach for military strategy. Why? Because it was a miracle. I mean, I don't think you could repeat it. I can't even explain it to this day. I've studied the 6 Day War, and still to this day, I'm kind of like, how? And they embarrass the Russian funded and trained Arab armies. And so Russia at that point was like, we're done. We want to attack the United States. The way we're going to do that is by attacking Israel, who is clearly aiming in the direction of the West. Israel and America didn't become strong like allies until a lot later. People have this idea that America and Israel, they've been like neck and neck since 1948. That's not particularly true. Yes, we were the first one to unofficially recognize Israel. Russia was the first one to officially. But like in terms of like military allyship and funding, that didn't happen until really JFK was the first person actually to give them major military weaponry. There was some that we did before, but like actual real packages, Hawk missiles, that was John F. Kennedy, who was very, very pro-Israel. And so, and then, you have 77, you have the Bird and Bard system with Israel. And then not till really the late 80s is when we had kind of a continuous like MOU and foreign military aid, whatnot. Sorry, I'm rambling. Back to Operation SIG. What I wanted to say is that Russia wanted to attack America. I just wanted to give you guys kind of the background. And so the way they did that is the first thing they did is they took the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which is very anti-Semitic book. That's really just it's plagiarized book, but whatever, it doesn't matter. They took a word, replaced it with Jew, and just pretty much posted it out. They translated it to Arabic and sent it throughout the Arab world because that was phase one. They wanted to make the Arab world even more anti-Semitic. And so once that was accomplished, at the same time, they're working with people like Yasser Arafat, who was a KGB agent. He has a code name, Mahmoud Abbas, same exact thing. And they were telling him, when you speak, stop with this whole like jihad. Like you continue to say that in Arabic, tell that to your people. But when you speak to the West, when you speak to international communities, what you need to say you're fighting for human rights. Say you're fighting for, the stuff like that, essentially to speak to the West. Yasser Arafat listened to that. And it's still to this very day, the same exact thing. The words like apartheid, which they didn't even accuse Israel of until the actual apartheid in South Africa went away. Why would you not call Israel an apartheid if it was an apartheid? Why do you have to wait for the actual one to go away? Because if you called it an apartheid while there's South Africa's apartheid going on, well, then people will just look at you and say, what are you talking about? And so they started all the buzzwords you hear today, all from Operation SIG. So to wrap it up and answer your question, I think Russia's doing something very similar. During Operation SIG, they would fund universities to try to shift the narrative of the young minds because the youngest adults are the most malleable adults. Their brains are not, they're the dumbest adults. Let's just be honest. And Qatar is doing the same thing today. Qatar is funding a lot of universities. A lot of them are satellite universities in Qatar. Not all of them, but even the ones that are satellite universities in Qatar, it still shapes the policy of American universities. And there's a study that was done that actually said that universities that took money, aid from Middle Eastern countries, generally Qatar, had a 300% increase of anti-Semitic attacks reported on their campuses. 300% versus those that didn't take money from Middle Eastern countries, specifically Qatar.
Wow. Now, one of the biggest claims right now is you're not allowed to question Israel. Now, you've pushed back hard on that. Why do you think that claim has become so popular?
Yeah, I've always laughed at that. Like the amount of people are like, why can't we talk about Israel? Why you like as they're talking about Israel? I saw this one video of Tucker Carlson. They put together, it was not even quite almost 2 months, but not quite 2 months of every single time him or his guest mentioned Israel. And it was, I believe, the equivalent of mentioning Israel almost every hour for every waking moment of every day, 7 days a week. Like if you did the number and reverse math it was insane. Yeah, why is that claim so popular? I have no idea. I think my best guess is what happens is when people go beyond just free speech. Look, if you're allowed to say I don't like Jews, right? Do I think you're a good person? No, but you're not going to jail for that. No one's suing you for that. And that's the problem is what happens is there was a video that went viral on X some weeks ago about a guy in Texas And the caption, there's a video, right? But before you play the video, the caption says, this Texan was visited by the police because he's anti Israel and he made comments about Israel. And so when you read that caption, you're like, that's awful. What the heck? Of course, you can question Israel. You shouldn't be visited by the police. If you want to say Israel's awful, satanic, you're wrong, but whatever, fine. You can do that. You click the video. The very first sentence, it's really weird. These people have no shame. They will say a lie and then they'll post the thing that debunks them. You click the video, the very first sentence is the police saying, hey, we're just here to question if you have some kind of ill intent because of your comments about the Jewish people. Never says anything about Israel. And then it comes out, people find out who this guy is because he's the one that posted the original video. And then they go through his ex and he's posting videos with him with guns saying we should kill Jews. We should do that. Not Israel, not even Israelis, Jews. And it doesn't matter because the debunking of that claim will get hundreds of thousands of views at best. But the original one will get millions to tens of millions of views. And people, because a lot of people, especially Americans, will read a headline, read a caption, and they'll be like, that's good enough for me. And so there's millions of people out there that saw this caption that said this guy in Texas was being visited by the police because he's anti-Israel. And there's only hundreds of thousands of people at best who found out, oh, wait, that's actually not true. He was talking about Jews and he was literally saying we should murder them. And so we have to continue fighting against disinformation. And that's what I've been doing for the better part of 5 years now when it comes to Israel and the Jewish people. I would have never guessed I'd be in this position, even talking to you 5 years ago. I didn't grow up with Jews. I mean, I'm sure I had some Jewish friends, maybe. I didn't. I didn't know much, really anything other than Jews existed. And when I was a kid, I probably would have just told you those are the people from the Bible, right? Like I don't. And it's not even a religious thing for me. I'm a cradle Catholic, not really a Christian anymore. I believe in God, very wholeheartedly believe in God, and that's about it. I'm not really part of an organized religion. I call myself a Noahide today because I follow the 7 laws of Noah, and that's it. And so, but for me, it's not a religious thing. It's just I just seek truth. I have a moral clarity. I have my values, and I won't bend them for anyone. And so I think, to answer your question, I think what's happening is people just believe a narrative that's not true. And it's because not everyone's going to be like Nick Matau, where it's like, I see something, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm going to look more into that. A lot of people are good with just reading a caption or headline and moving on. And so I do blame them for not doing research, but I don't blame them for thinking that this is true because, of course, they're going to think that if all the information they have is at best headlines.
Now, recently we saw Chabad on the news with Tucker and Candace making accusations. But I came across a story about you that really stood out. You were going through a difficult moment, and you walked into a Chabad center, not even being Jewish. Maybe you can tell us the story.
Yeah, I was my now wife, but at the time, my fiance, she was in Israel. We were separated, not a relationship. We were still in a relationship, but physically separated for a little over a year. She went back to Israel because she had to kind of finish up some last minute stuff. Well, in Israel, last minute is never last minute, but she went back to Israel. So we met in person because we originally met online, kind of dated. We met in person. We traveled from one side of the United States to another, and we hung out for over a month. She had to go back to Israel to take care of some last minute stuff, medical records, stuff like that. We thought 1.5, 2 months. That turned into a little over a year. And so at this time, I was stationed in Hawaii while I was in the U.S. Navy. I was I was in a bit of a low mood because of that. And then at the same time, it was night. I had just gotten off duty, right? Or no, the day after duty, because duty is when you stand 24 hours. And then the next day, try to leave early because you've already been there working effectively 24-hour shift. But we had a lot of maintenance. I left. It was nighttime. I was going home essentially to go to bed so I can wake up and get right back to the submarine. And so I just was not in a good place. My fiance, now wife, calls me. I pull over, right? Because it was a video call. I talk with her. My hopes are a little bit lifted. We're good. I miss her, but it's all good. I get off the phone and I just kind of sit there. I think a lot of men have this, where you just kind of sit in the car and you just wait. And again, remember, I pulled over and I look to the right and I see a menorah, like a little one in a think about like an office complex kind of look. It's not like a synagogue, right? But on the first floor in the little corner of the window, there's a little lit up menorah. And I just kind of thought, at this time I'm advocating for Israel and the Jewish people. Been doing it for probably at this point a little over maybe a year, give or take. I don't know, maybe not even that long. And I'm kind of like, what does a menorah do? And not that I don't think Jews exist in Hawaii. It's just, I don't know, kind of a weird thought. And so I get out and I walk because it's lit up. So even though it's not or just right after like sunset, whatever, I go in and I'm looking around, there's nothing. And I'm like, huh, that's weird. And then I'm about to leave, but then I saw a sign that said, Chabad or whatever upstairs. So I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go check it out. I kind of knew a little bit about like I knew Chabad existed, but I didn't know anything about it. So I go in the elevator, I go up and then it opens and just a bunch of Jews. And I was just like, oh, I got a little nervous because I'm a little bit of an introvert. And somebody there was like, oh, here you go. He gives me like this pamphlet. He's like, come on in. And then Rabbi was there and he's just like, hey, how are you doing? And I'm wearing my uniform, but like my sleeves are rolled up. He kind of sees my tattoos and he's just kind of like, oh, are you here, for Shabbat? Or it was the closing of Shabbat, sorry. And I'm just kinda like, "Look, I'm gonna be real, I'm not Jewish. I don't really know what much this means. I'll let you guys get to your thing. I didn't realize you guys are doing certain." He's like, "No, no, no, come in. Please, you'll love it, you'll enjoy it." There was no flinch at all. He didn't even care. I was just like, "You know what? I'm gonna advocate in my mind. I'm gonna advocate for the Jews and stuff. Maybe it would be good to, like, know a little about their culture." They do their thing. A lot of it's in Hebrew. I don't understand a thing, but I felt very welcome. They didn't put me like to the side or in the back. I was just there, like, here, stand right there, right in the middle where the men were, and it was great. And then we all head downstairs, and they had like a kitchen, and then I know it's kind of embarrassing. I still don't really know what it is. I know it's called a Kiddush cup or whatever, but they were doing the rest of what they do, on Shabbat. And yeah, they even told me like tip their fingers and I don't know, do this. And I've been explained kind of what that is, but they had me do that as well. This little old lady, she was just like the most adorable person. She comes up to me and she's like speaking to me, "Are you Jewish?" I said, "No." Rabbi told me to stay. She's like, "Oh, you should, that's amazing. You should, let us know if you need any help." And so I found out later it's the rabbi's mother, but at the time I didn't know. She sees my tattoos. She's like, "They're nice tattoos, but please just do me a favor. Don't get any more tattoos. Don't get any more." It was like I've heard of a Jewish mother guilt, but it has to work because I haven't gotten a tattoo since. I'm not saying it's because she asked me not to. I haven't gotten one since. And so, anyways, the rabbi ends up coming up to me after we go outside and he wants to know more about my story. And I just tell him, like, I'm in the US Navy. This is what I do. I told him the reason I went in is because I advocate for Israel and the Jewish people. And I'm learning a lot recently. And I told him a year ago, I wouldn't have known any of this stuff. And he gave me his number. I still have his number. He's like, if you ever need anything, just let me know. And he was very nice. And yeah, I remember that day like it was yesterday.
So, how would you respond to Tucker and Candace's accusations about Chabad?
Yeah, I think there's a special kind of evil to go after an innocent people. And Candace is definitely known for that, not just with Chabad and the Jewish people, what she's even doing with Erica Kirk and Charlie's Legacy. I think there was a report just released yesterday of somebody going through her analytics and explaining, as somebody who understands YouTube's analytics, that she's made in the past 6 months approximately, give or take, depending on the analytics shift a little bit, $60 million. And to answer your question, how do I respond? I have never, ever, 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 ever felt slighted by the Jewish community, Chabad included. When I was in Israel the very first time, I've been to Israel twice. I was supposed to be in Israel right now, actually. I was supposed to fly in yesterday, but it got delayed. I was kind of like, why is it getting delayed? Who cares? And that's what mamads are for. That's what the sirens are for. But yeah, they wouldn't let me go. Anyways, the first time I was there, it was during Yom Kippur, 2023. I left days before October 7th. My first trip. But even then, when I was, I was still advocating. People knew me, but not a lot. Excuse me. Everyone during Yom Kippur, hey, let me buy you a bike. We're gonna go on this ride. Hey, you have a place for Shabbat. So many Shabbat dinners. You have a place to stay. You have that. Like, never ever once felt slighted. Just about everyone knows I'm a goy. There's no never felt anyone treat me differently. In fact, sometimes they go a little overboard with treating me too nicely because they'll be like, I've had people come up on the live and they're just like, Nick, you are one of us. Stop saying you're not. And I'm like, okay, but I'm not, though. Like, I appreciate it. I know it's coming from a good place, but don't undermine your Torah. Don't undermine your identity and who you are as a people just because of your love for me. I appreciate it. I do. But your Torah is very clear. I'm not Jewish, and that's okay. But still, the thought of what they're saying, it's very nice. The second time I went to Israel, this was post October 7th, obviously. That was about a year ago. It was Pesach last year. I'm a lot more known at that point. Walking through the street about every, I don't know, at least once an hour, sometimes every 10 minutes, someone came up to me. And I really love Israelis because they don't oversell it. They're just kind of like, hey, I love your stuff. Thanks, Nick. And they just walk away. At most, they come to shake my hand, maybe take a picture, and they just like, they're quick. And so I actually really appreciate that. But yeah, I've never felt slighted. Chabad has helped so many people. In fact, I want to say most of the people they help technically are Gentiles. Now, to be fair, there's only 0.2% of the world is Jewish, but still, Chabad is everywhere. Chabad has helped so many people, and I've never once felt like, oh, okay, I'll get to you after. They treat it exactly the same. And at this point, I've been to a lot of Chabads relatively for a Gentile. I know a lot of rabbis. Never felt slighted by any of them. My one of my very, very, very close friends is a guy named Rabbi Litvin. He's Chabad out of Kentucky. He's absolutely incredible. He's answered my questions with. Sometimes I ask him the craziest questions because I'm like, I debate this stuff, and it's like, hey, somebody said this about I don't know the Talmud, the Rambam, whatever. He doesn't wave it off. He's had hour-long conversations just to make sure I kind of understand, and he's informed me about a lot of stuff, and yeah, he's great.
Wow.
I've never felt slighted by him. He's Chabad.
Yeah, it's incredible. Now, obviously, your debate with Sneako got a lot of attention. What stood out
Yeah,
to you most in that conversation? What do you think were the biggest flaws in his argument? You can just give us your thoughts on that.
yeah, um, I didn't pay as much attention to the argument while it was going on. I was just doing my thing. I wasn't treating him any differently than maybe a random person that came up in my live. So I had to actually go back and watch the argument again because I'm my biggest critic, and I thought to myself a little after, like, why didn't I say this? Why didn't I go this direction? When he said this, why did I allow him to deflect in some cases? But everyone, even some of the biggest Sneako fans were like, yeah, you did incredible. You destroyed him. Andrew Wilson has come up on my live to talk about it. I've been reached out by many, many people. And so I was like, maybe I need to watch it again. I still feel like I did. I mean, don't get me wrong, good, but like, or well, I don't know. I'm my biggest critic. His biggest flaws in his arguments, his biggest flaws, I would say, is only having, and this is something a lot of pro Palestinians do, they only have surface level knowledge based off of buzzwords or phrases that they've heard online. They kind of all say the same thing with a slight adjustment at best, but they've never actually taken the time to look into what that means, what it is. Like, for example, how many times have we all heard, well, it didn't start on October 7th. And a lot of pro Israelis, and this is my message to some pro Israelis that are in the debate space, stop forming your arguments or answering like you have to defend yourself. Okay. Sometimes sure, a quick answer, of course, you have to give a defense. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is formulate the conversation, push the conversation in the direction that you are now putting it back onto them. So I hear a lot of people, it didn't start on October 7th. A lot of pro Israelis go, well, actually, da 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 da. And that's all true. They'll say all correct information. Like the context of this war definitely started on October 7th. I don't know anyone who says that it literally started on October 7th. There was no conflict before. The only people that say that are pro-Pali saying pro-Israeli say that. I've never heard a pro-Israeli say that. But I did something different with Sneako. And the reason it caused him to stumble is because he probably was like, okay, I'm going to say this part of my script and I know he'll say this, but I didn't say that. I said, okay, when did it start? And he goes, I'm 1948. And I'm like, okay, fine. It started in 1948. So can you explain to me the 1936 to 39 riots where they slaughtered approximately 510 Jews, right? Some reports say 400 to 500, but generally accepted as 510 Jews. What was the reason for that? And he goes, well, I mean, there was conflict, but I thought you just said there wasn't conflict. I'm like, what about 1929? because he's like, well, they were, it was because of Zionism. They targeted Jews. I'm not defending that, but it's because of Zionism. Okay, in 1929 at the Hebron massacre, they go to an anti-Zionist community and they slaughter a lot of those Jews as well. They were anti-Zionist. What was the reason for that? And so what I did was I took his argument instead of just being in a defense mode, which again I could do, and I would do very well. I'd still beat him in it. But instead, I took his argument, used his own logic, and put it back onto him for him to answer the question. And so, to generally speak, that's what if you watch the debate, he consistently tries to shift from topic to topic. The reason he's doing that is because of the strategy that I use, because he doesn't have an answer and he's too proud to say, you know what, actually, I don't know. So it forces them to deflect. And that's what people see when they're watching at home. It's like, okay, this guy's getting, beaten at this debate because you're just constantly, you're getting angry, you're deflecting, and that's what I do. It's actually funny. It's kind of hard to find debates now because the irony is a lot of people saw that debate, a lot of people. And then all of a sudden I started getting these offers of media companies and debates channels that are like, I can set up a debate with this person. I know this person. I know this person. And I'm like, finally, I can start debating some of these people. And I'll start with some of their idiots, to be honest. And then maybe I'll gain up to some of their not as much of idiots. Okay. But what ends up happening is I've had no major debates since because the first person that reaches out to me is a guy named Sean Kelly. He's, I think, one of the biggest podcasts out there. I think he's #1 on Apple. He's like, at first he just wants me on the show. I'm like, sounds great. He's in Vegas. I go to Vegas all the time. And then he's like, actually, I can set up a debate with you with Kenny Ko or Jake Shields. A lot of people know Jake Shields. Kenny Ko's not as popular, equally as anti-Semitic. Holocaust denier. They're just both awful human beings, right? They're disgusting. And I'm like, I'd love to put these guys in their place. However, I told Sean, I said, look, these guys are no match for me. Can I do 2 versus 1? Right? Have both of them there so I can just 2 birds, 1 stone. And he's like, oh, that sounds great. I thought he would say no. And then Jake Shields backs out. Even with the 1v1, he just doesn't want to debate me. I called him out on that. He blocks me. Sneako blocked me. And then Kenny Ko accepts. I'm like, okay, I got one of them. I told Kenny Ko, get a friend, right? I still want to do the 2 versus 1. He's trying to get Dan Blazarian, I heard. I don't know what happened. 2 weeks later, just a couple days ago, we're getting ready. We're supposed to debate on April 3rd. So a couple days ago, I wake up and Sean tells me, hey, Kenny Ko backed out. And I was like, well, why? What happened? And he's like, I told him to watch your Sneako debate to understand like how you debate. And he backed out after watching it. And so that happened. Myron Gaines. This is somebody I've actually asked in person at not AmFest, but the other TPUSA event, SAS, back in Student Action Summit. That was back in like June, last June. I asked him in person. He ducked me. I thought, hey, now that I've debated his friend Sneako, maybe he'll want to like, okay, maybe I have enough notoriety. I don't know, whatever. So I go to his page to maybe message him or whatever. I found out he already blocked me. He like saw the Sneako debate and he just like preemptively blocked me. I was like, okay. And then I had another guy named Junior on X. He's very big. He has like 250,000+ followers, just always spreading a lot of lies. He was actually banned for just consistently posting lies and AI, passing them off as real. And then he got his account back. I was supposed to do a 2v2. It was me and a guy named Apostate Prophet, which is absolutely incredible, versus Junior and some guy named Rain. I actually don't know who he is. And then everyone accepts. We're getting ready. 3 hours, 4 hours before the debate, backs out of debating indefinitely. He posts this long thing about how he's done with debating. He debated all the time, and all of a sudden he's just like, actually, indefinitely, I'm just gonna not debate. So, Scott Ritter, another person. This is a very just awful person. He was a UN weapons inspector during the Iraq War. Posted a response to Joe Kent about his claims on Tucker Carlson's show saying, hey, I was a nuclear engineer in the US Navy. I would love to debate you about your claims about Iran's nuclear capabilities. Joe Kent doesn't answer, but Scott Ritter's in my comment section. He's very big, over 500,000+ followers. And he's like, I'll debate you anytime, any platform, and you'll lose badly. And I was like, okay, perfect. I immediately answer. I said, okay, let's do it tonight on my live. Still, it's been 4 days, or 3 or 4 days since that moment. Hasn't messaged me, hasn't commented, nothing. And all the people are like, oh, Scott Ritter's going to destroy you. And I'm like, well, get him on the phone. I'm ready. And I cannot get people to lock down debate. So now I'm setting up a debate. We'll see if he holds to it. The guy named Suleiman Ahmed. He's almost 1 million followers on X, spreads a lot of anti-Israel propaganda. Hopefully he'll hold to it. I'm still waiting for word. And there's also some professor, I don't remember his name, who started something called AzaPac. I think it's Anti-Zionist American Pack. I'm not really sure. Trying to get him to debate. He's a professor. He should beat me, right? So we'll see.
Have you been approached by Piers Morgan, and what do you think of his platform?
No, I haven't been approached. Not that I know of. I I think he likes a certain type of person on Piers. Not that he's never brought some very structured people, but his biggest, most viewed ones are going to be 99% Chank having an extremely red face while screaming at the camera. Like, I don't know how that guy doesn't have high blood pressure. I would love to debate Chank because I would debate him in fair. And the second he started screaming and getting weird, I would probably just poke at him to get him to scream more and just troll him a little bit because he's not in good faith. To answer your question, no, I haven't. Piers' show, I think Piers' show is a strong recipe for viewership, and that's fine. It's totally fine. I know a lot of people kind of say, "Oh, it's a circus," and it totally is. The only thing I have a problem with Piers is I think he tries to play it off as if it's not. Jerry Springer, Ben Shapiro called it the Jerry Springer esque. And Piers tried to be like, well, he had great ratings. But Jerry Springer never tried to imply that it wasn't a circus or clown show or whatever you want to, like, it was meant to be exaggerant. He never denied that. In fact, that was the purpose of the show. If Piers just came out and he's like, yeah, look, I want to have serious questions. I have serious opinions. It's not totally Jerry Springer, but I want it to be like kind of a street fight style debates with 6 people. Okay, do it. It's your show. It's fine. But don't try to like pretend to us that you're not. Tucker Carlson, same exact thing. Well, I'm just a journalist. I'm just asking questions. I have no issue with Israel. I talk about Israel all the time, but I have no issue with it at all. Like, the problem is you're saying you're just a journalist, but then when somebody disagrees with you, which I'll give you a little bit of props, at least you're sometimes talking with people that disagree with you, you debate them, you interrupt them, you change the topic, you deflect. Which one is it? It's fine. Again, if you want to be a show that's like, I'm a journalist, but I also kind of debate. If you want to be a show where you want to bring 6 people on and have them yell and scream and change just like, bah, bah, then just say that. Nobody will fault you for it because that is what definitely gets ratings. And when it comes to social media ratings, the more extreme you are, not even just extreme, but I'm not talking about like extreme in values. I'm even saying extreme with like how you say something, the way you say something, it will get more views. And if you are a little bit more calm and truth telling and stuff, you will still get views because you'll find them, but it takes a lot longer. You're not just like going to go viral overnight and have hundreds of thousands of followers by the end of the week, right? Because people will just slowly find you. And I'd rather have that any day of the week. I don't care that I've been doing this for 5 years. I've been banned over 20 times on TikTok. I don't care because I'd rather have a slow growth with dedicated, truthful, real people that have similar values than just like having this weird like circus show that gets me a lot of views overnight. And it's, look, again, I have no issue, particularly with Piers. I disagree with a lot of stuff he says. I agree with some of the things he says. Yesterday, he came out on X and I gave him props because he admitted, he said, so Iran has been lying about their capabilities with their missiles. And now they could maybe not effectively, but reach the UK and we have really no way to stop it. And I gave him props for that because a lot of people were kind of giving him shit and saying, we've been telling you this for years. And I said that too, but I said, at least he's saying it now. Whereas there's a lot of people who told us it was all lies. It was a Zionist propaganda. Iran, they literally came out and said we limited to 2,000 kilometers. You know, they all went radio silent. So I'll give Piers some props in that.
It seems like Piers is, like you said, Piers' show is more entertainment than trying to convince people of who's right and who's wrong. I mean, how can that even happen with people yelling over each other? It seems like he just rotates between Chank and Anna Kasparian.
Yeah,
And
you know what? I think it used to be a little bit more structured right after October 7th, and we were getting some kind of information. Go watch. I haven't seen the latest one, but I bet you I'm right. Go watch the latest one. 95% of it is just somebody screaming something and somebody trying to correct that person. And even kind of both sides are just talking points we've all heard at this point. Obviously, I'm privy to the pro-Israel side because that's generally going to be the truthful side. Although sometimes I hear some pro-Israelis and I'm just kind of like, yeah, that probably wasn't the best answer. You probably should have answered this way. But you're right. It's like Dave Smith, Chank, Anna Kasparian, like these people, I don't even think would have a continued career much, especially Dave Smith. At least Chank and Anna have Young Turks. If it wasn't for Piers, I don't think anyone else is like really talking to them. And so it's just, Dave is a little bit more collected, so I'll give him that. Although he says Dave's whole strategy is this idea of just kind of giving like a sprinkle of information and then saying, if you want to know more, just go read this book that I'd probably only skim through. But at least he's more collected. Shank and Anna is just like Anna. Anna will get mad, and Shank will get mad because Goldie Gamari and Elika Laban, who did absolutely incredible. They were class acts when they were debating Shank and his anti-Semitism. All they did was kind of chuckle and smile, and they lost their mind. They had a whole episode and they called them hyenas because they were laughing, which the whole world was laughing. Did you see Chank during that moment? Everyone was laughing.
Yeah. Do you think people like Sneako, Chank, these others actually believe what they're saying, or do they have an agenda? Are they influenced by other things? Like, how much of that is real and how much of that is a show?
I think I think some people definitely believe it, but I think they also have a strong confirmation bias and they have created an echo chamber for themselves that like I'm going out and actually speaking. I've spoken at this point 10,000 plus, not all Palestinians, but pro-Palestinians, Palestinians, Arab, Muslims, etc. Easily 10,000 plus. And now some of them are kind of starting to do it. They're starting to debate more. I don't know why they would after, especially Sneako. I mean, after our debate, but maybe he's still going out there. I don't know. He blocked me. I don't know what he's doing. I think Sneako is just an insecure little man who is struggling with his identity. He was in, to put it directly, he was in gay magazines and stuff doing expletive pictures, if you will, I'll say. And all of a sudden he converts to Islam. I feel like he only did it because he was trying to copy Andrew Tate. And now Andrew Tate's going after him and calling him out for a lot of his fakeness, not defending Andrew Tate per se, but yeah, he has a lot of receipts and sources and proofs, and he's just calling it out. And I think Sneako is just having this identity crisis, and he's just kind of reaching out. And he found, ironically, some kind of love from the hateful community. Some people, now that's some that are just like that. Some, I think, they see an advantage, especially monetary gain in this. And I'll give you an example. I thought it was kind of interesting. Like, I'm not one of these people that's gonna like try to like hide certain secrets in the industry, whether I get big or I don't, or I stay where I'm at. I am going to always be authentically myself. So I'll just say this straight out. When I had my debate with Sneako, immediately get reached out by the other guy from the Fresh and Fit podcast. His name is Fresh, right? Because Fresh and Fit podcast is where Myron Gaines is. Myron Gaines blocked me. The other guy, his last name is Weeks. He reaches out and he's like, "Hey, good job debating Sneako. F Sneako. And if you ever want to come on to my other podcast, it's in Miami. You know, we should do a podcast sometime." And I'm just kind of thinking to myself, this guy from the Fresh and Fit podcast is like telling me good job. It's a little weird. And then there's another guy, 1.6 million followers, who's sharing my stuff, and he even has some pro-Israel content. They at the Fresh podcast, again, probably not Myron Gaines, but the other ones, told him to like share my content. And then I get reached out by another kind of manager over that podcast who said F Sneako. And I immediately was like, okay, look, I'm so confused. Is Myron Gaines like the only person at your guys' podcast that likes Sneako? What is this? And they're just kind of like, yeah, probably. I mean, like, he's a disingenuous, bad person, not a very good dude, blah, 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 blah. Now, that doesn't mean I'm saying that it's all fake, but what I'm saying is there's people who clearly have a different opinion, or at least aren't foaming at the mouth of anti-Israel propaganda. I'm sure maybe those guys still are anti-Israel, but they're not like this crazy thing. And then you have Myron Gaines, who I feel like he never changes his clothing. He's always wearing that stupid, like, he's making fun of the Holocaust with the Cookie Monster eating the cookies, saying, "Let him cook." I don't know if that guy owns like 30 of those sweatshirts or if he just doesn't wash his clothes. Every time I see him, he's wearing that sweatshirt. Anyways, he's wearing this stuff. He's saying the Holocaust was fake. He's saying just pretty much as vile as you can get. So I'm a little confused. Like, if I had a team, I am independent, but if I had a team, I certainly wouldn't have a team of people that disagree with my core values, right? Like, I'm a conservative. I'm friends with liberals, but like leftists, like far left, I'm not going to do that. Someone who's far right, I'm not going to do that. Like someone's not going to be on my team that I co-host podcasts with who says Heil Hitler. Like or somebody who's like I want to demolish like American society and bring up communism. Like I'm just not going to have that. Have your beliefs, but you're not going to be in my circle. So I get a little confused when I find out more about some of these people in their inner circle. It's a little weird.
Now, right now, everything seems connected to Iran, obviously. What do you think people fundamentally misunderstand about Iran's role promoting terrorism throughout the world? And people just say this is Israel's war. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, I think a lot of people think Iran is just like a regional threat. Some people don't even know at all about their proxy warfare with Hezbollah, Houthis, Hamas, PIJ, etc., Iraqi militia groups, Syrian militia groups. What people don't realize is no, they're doing that around the world. Operation Cassandra exposed Hezbollah in our Western hemisphere, right south of us here in America, in Argentina, Venezuela, and although obviously with people are fixing that, but at the time in 2008 was when Operation Cassandra was done. Hezbollah was doing drugs and weapon smuggling, which gained them a lot of money, which of course they use as a pipeline to fund their terrorism around the world, especially in the Middle East. And so you had even some evidence that suggested that these people were getting passports through legitimate governments in South America. And so it was a way for them to use passports to possibly enter into the United States, not by sneaking in, not by illegal means, but by legal ones. And so this idea that Iran is, it's funny, anti don't strike Iran, we're pretending to be America first, but really not. People, they kind of kept saying over and over, like, oh, Iran's not a threat, Iran's not a threat, Iran's not a threat. And now we're finding out more information. And now they notice how they shifted. They now are saying, well, okay, Iran's a threat, but they're not an imminent threat. What does an imminent threat mean in today's day and age? Because back in the day, in like an older military, imminent kind of meant you're seeing them mobilize troops. Like think of the 6-Day War, what led up to it. Imminent was Egypt is putting troops into the Sinai. Syria, they're starting to align their troops around Israel. They're getting stuff ready. Look, Iran's missiles, they're older missiles that they kind of started their missile program really in the Iraq-Iran war. They had ambitions before that, but that's when they really started it. They've been obviously upgrading and developing them since, but some of these like 70s technology that they use more often even in this war because they want America and Israel to shoot off their very expensive interceptors. A lot of these missiles were liquid fuel, okay? Now they have solid fuel, right? They're newer missiles. Now the difference, to put it lightly for the context of this conversation, is that liquid fuel, you kind of bring it out and you have to pump the fuel in while it's on the launcher, and then you can launch it. You can be exposed for an hour or more. And so in today's day and age with warfare today, that won't work because essentially what it does is you're going to be seen most likely, and then they'll just shoot you before you can get the missile off. Now, that's not always the case, and Iran finds ways around it, but it's significantly harder. So my point is that imminent before meant mobilization of troops and weaponry. Today, what does imminent mean? Them pushing the button? Like, today's day and age, you can load a cartridge into a missile, bring the launcher out, shoot it, and move within minutes, right? What does imminent mean? And the reason they're doing this is because they realized they were wrong to say Iran wasn't a threat, because you have stuff like Operation Cassandra with their proxy warfare. In the past couple of years, 50, give or take, Americans have died because of Iran's proxies. You have, what was I going to say? You have that we found out that they are actually developing their missile program significantly more than what our intelligence originally thought, or at least publicly we thought. And so, again, I would challenge anyone, what does imminent mean? And whatever that does mean, because in today's day and age, imminent means they're about to launch. If that's the case, then I simply ask somebody who says we shouldn't do anything with Iran until they're an imminent threat, is that a good strategy? Like, do you think it's smart to wait until, again, contemporary version of imminent? It's no longer just mobilization of troops, and maybe you're like, okay, we should attack now. We have maybe a few weeks even, but like we should attack now. Is it smart to wait until they're about to push the button? And is it smart to rely solely on just our intelligence? Our intelligence is great. We get a lot of intelligence from Israel, which is great, but All it takes is just one thing missed. And that imminent now becomes they're literally launching on us. I don't want to wait for that. I don't trust that process.
Now, figures like Nick Fuentes and his Groypers have been very vocal against Israel, obviously. Why do you think that message resonates so much with young people? Um, what's your analysis of that?
Well, I think it's a mix between a long-term plan and also taking advantage of angst and anger that you see in every generation's young people. And the reason is you always throughout history, dictators, emperors have always targeted college days students because they are or whatever that society's adult is, youngest adult, because that's the society of military age fighting male, but they are the most susceptible to misinformation, and you can kind of form them how you want. So when you look at the 100-year plan by the Muslim Brotherhood, which we're about halfway through right now, the 100-year plan of the Muslim Brotherhood is them essentially saying, hey, jihad, when it comes to the West, doesn't really work, right? We need to shift our plan, infiltrate their political spaces, their lobbying groups, infiltrate their universities. You see Qatar sending a lot of money. And as I mentioned earlier, even the satellite universities have affected policy in some of these universities on the mainland. And so they're targeting these kids for many, many years now. So naturally, that's going to have a slight effect. And then you take that effect, you mix it in with anger, angst, hate, which you do find a lot in young people, especially during a time where economy is a little harder, right? We're even my generation. I'm a millennial. I'm 33. Even I remember as a young kid, life was a little easier. You could buy a house with an even kind of a normal office job. It's not like that anymore. I was lucky enough to own a place, built it up a little bit in Hawaii, and then I sold it, and that's nice. But a lot of people don't even have that opportunity, let alone even more. And so when you kind of mix that in with a lot of the problems, short attention span, right? Social media has really controlled, it's taken over anything that's just media in general. When you mix all that together, that's a formula for being able to shape the minds of the young people. Now, then your next question is well, why is this one shaping the mind and not the other? And so it's pretty simple. One, numbers. Unfortunately, the pro Israel side's never going to have the numbers, ever, ever, ever. I mean, most Muslims by themselves are obviously going to be pro-Palestinian. There's some outliers, but that's generally going to be the case. They're going to be anti-Israel. That's a quarter of the whole world, just right off the bat. That's 1 in every 4 people. And then you add in all the leftists and the Marxists and communists and China and Russia and disinformation propaganda. That's probably more than half the world at this point. And then you add in all the far right people and the neo-Nazis. That's even more. And so it's like, you're never going to have the numbers. And unfortunately, a lot of pro-Israelis are pro-Israel, but they're not like speaking up. They're just kind of people that if you talk to them on the street, they're like, oh yeah, of course I stand with Israel. But they're not on the internet. They're not on these like swaths of like the dark corners of the internet, like fighting with people. I do believe there's a lot more pro-Israelis than obviously would show on the internet. I'll add all that in. That's numbers. The second reason is especially when you're young with a short attention span, it's much easier to grasp this scapegoat of the Jewish people. Hey, by the way, your life sucks because of them, right? They can take that and be like, yeah, our side can't answer back with a one sentence little clip. It has to be like, well, actually, that's not particularly true. You know, APAC's number 191 in lobbying groups. They've lobbied like $65 million since 1998. And even if you include their super PACs, it's probably overall from their whole history, probably less than $500 million, right? There's some lobbying groups that spend more in 1 year than like APAC and their super PACs combined. Super PACs didn't even start until 2022. They've only been part of 2 elections, the midterm elections and of course this last presidential election. That's not going to, even putting it quickly like that, that's not going to resonate with young people. What are they going to hear? They're going to hear all this and there's statistics and I put all these graphs up. Or are they going to hear like, the Jews are the reason that you are going through all your problems. Here is a cherry picked piece of information that's probably not even particularly true, but you're not going to look it up, that says this one Jew did this one thing at this one time. So therefore the Jews are actually the reason, you can't buy a house. I don't know. And it's insane. How many times have you heard of the Rothschilds banking? Did anyone know, like, if anyone looked, the Rothschild banking was very big prior, like in the 1800s. It is almost compared to what it was, is almost next to nothing. Now they're almost exclusively like advisory. boards and stuff. Yeah, they obviously still exist, but it's like they don't even have a stronghold, chokehold, or whatever you want to call it, like they did even in the 1800s. And even if they did, it's so funny. My wife is Jewish. If I asked her, "Hey, are you in this like WhatsApp group with the Rothschilds?" Right? She's like, "Yeah, I wish." She's looking in her pocket. She's like, "I don't got this money." It's so funny when you see a white person, a black person, a Mexican, Asian, whatever. Pick a group. If they do something right, that's really bad. Look at the comment section. Sometimes you might get people that say hateful things and try to attribute it to all white people, black people, whatever. But if a Jewish person, someone with the last name Berg, Steen, whatever, they do something bad, same exact thing, go look at that comment section. 99%, it's like flipped. It's not onesie, twosie. It's like 99% was like, there it is. All the Jews do this. Jews do this. And it's like, why can't Jews, just like any other people, just have bad people? Why is that? Why can't they have, of course, they're not immune from that. They have bad people too. Some of them are jerks, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Nick, I really appreciate you coming on. I think this is was a great conversation. I want to thank you for your courage to speak up and speak the truth about Israel, Jewish people. I mean, as you said, there's not that many out there. I mean, we're vastly outnumbered, but we're glad to have you, speaking out, with us. I wish you the best of luck in the future. And how can people find you if you want to leave us with, a short final message?
Yeah, just pretty much Nick Matau on any platform. Sometimes there's an underscore, but if you type in Nick Matau, you'll find me. X, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. I'm sure there's probably Facebook. Facebook it's actually Nicholas the Zionist, actually. But whatever. If you type in Nick Matau, you'll find me. And thank you so much for having me. I'm Israel Chai and free Iran. And thank you.